Hello guys, my name is Bennie Onyibe. If you're just joining us for the first time, welcome. Our goal this year has been to finish the entire Bible. We are done with the Old Testament, and in the New Testament we've covered the book of Matthew. After the resurrection of Jesus, people that did not believe in him and his message, or people that were lukewarm about his entire message, we began to see a change in their hearts. Like for instance, when Jesus' brother James finally believed that Jesus is actually the Messiah as a result of his resurrection, as well as his mother Mary, as well as a Roman soldier who exclaimed upon the death of Jesus Christ on the cross and the events that surrounded it, that this is actually the promised Messiah. The book of Matthew then ended with Jesus appearing to his disciples and giving them the Great Commission, which is go into the world and preach this gospel and so on and so forth. Last week we literally talked about everything concerning Jesus, from his conception to his birth to his ministry to his death to his crucifixion to his resurrection. Because we spent 18 minutes breaking down Jesus's life and ministry and so on and so forth in our video last week, we're not going to do that again to avoid repetition, but you can always check it out in the description box below. Today we're talking about the book of Mark, which was written by John Mark, and it has 16 chapters. John Mark was not one of Jesus's 12 disciples. However, he was a co-worker of Paul and a very close partner of Peter. The gospel according to Mark was actually the very first gospel to be written down. So because of his relationship with the people that followed Jesus, and he himself was a follower of Jesus, he had a lot of first-hand knowledge in the things that went down during Jesus's time. Unlike the book of Matthew that began with Mary's conception of Jesus, the book of Mark throws us into Jesus' ministry. We see John the Baptist in Mark chapter 1 baptizing Jesus in order to fulfill the prophecy that was prophesied or that was made by prophet Isaiah and prophet Malachi in Isaiah chapter 40 verse 3 and in Malachi chapter 3 verse 1 respectively. The book then proceeds to talk about Jesus' temptation as well as the arrest of John the Baptist. We see Jesus gathering his disciples, performing miracles. He begins to teach. He begins to commission his disciples as apostles and give them the power to preach and heal the sick and cast out demons and so on and so forth. We see Jesus not discriminating with whom he dines or with whom he's seen. We see him teach and clarify things as well as speak in parables. We see the parable of the sower. We see the parable of the mustard seed. We see the parable of the growing seed. We see Jesus raise Jairus' daughter back to life, as well as the story of the woman with the issue of blood being healed by touching the robe of Jesus, all of which we trashed out in our previous video. We also see the story of when John the Baptist is beheaded, and the story of John the Baptist beheading and the reason behind it. You will actually see it written in greater detail in the book of Mark than in the book of Matthew. A lot of stories in the book of Matthew were repeated in the book of Mark. However, some were repeated in the book of Mark in greater detail, and others were repeated in summary or in less detail. We also see Jesus make controversial statements like that in the book of Mark chapter 5 verse 29, Mark chapter 8 verse 33, and Mark chapter 3 verse 31 to 35. Jesus was fully man and fully God, so he made some statements that were particularly unique, that if you do not have a tough skin, you will take a lot of the things he would say personally. Just picture yourself in their day following Jesus and hearing some of these statements that sounded a bit controversial and some offensive if you did not look at it with a certain kind of eye. Because when he's replying you, he's not just thinking about the present, he's thinking about the future, he's thinking about God's plans. And then we move to the end where we begin to see Jesus announcing the coming persecution that was about to befall him and the disciples as a result of their following him. We also see him being arrested. We see him being mocked. spat at, flogged, crucified, and his crucifixion lasted from 9 a.m. in the morning to 3 p.m. in the afternoon. And if you want to know what happened in greater details during the course of all of that, just check our video last week. Anyway, eventually Jesus gave up his ghost and his body was taken down and he was put in a tomb. He resurrects, appears to his disciples. He gives them the Great Commission, just like we saw in the book of Matthew. However, unlike the book of Matthew, the book of Mark ended in a different way. In Mark chapter 16 verse 16, we see Jesus tell them that whoever believes will be saved, whoever does not will be condemned. And he continued to say in verses 17 and 18 that once you believe, you'll be able to drive out demons, you will speak in new tongues. If you drink anything deadly, it will not harm you. If you lay your hands on the sick, they will be healed. We see Jesus then ascending into heaven and sitting at the right hand of God. The book ends by telling us that the disciples began to go out and preach and do everything that Jesus had commanded them to do. When reading the different gospels, the differences in the narratives that some people might see might be disturbing to them. But you need to remember that these gospels were not committed to writing until 30 to 50 years after the event had taken place. This is because they were originally circulated as oral accounts before they were finally written down. The writers of these four gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they did not sit in a round table to discuss their different accounts to be sure that what they were writing matched in great detail. Instead, they wrote from their recollections of Jesus' life and his ministry, as well as the eyewitness accounts of people that followed him and that knew him in the flesh. Just like the eyewitnesses of a car accident will not all give you the exact same narration of what happened simply because they are seeing it from different perspectives and different angles. It doesn't take away from the general message that there was a car accident. It's just narrated in different ways by different people. The variation of those incidents, it's understandable, and in fact it even goes to prove the authenticity of the narratives. And that applies to the four gospels as well. The slight variations you will see just goes to prove how authentic they were, because they were coming from different human beings with different experiences, writing from different viewpoints. Despite the slight variations you may notice in the four gospels, they all had one message. Jesus was born, he performed all that was prophesied of him in the Old Testament, he was crucified, he died, and he resurrected. The message remained consistent despite the variations that you might notice in these four gospels. I hope today's video gives you more clarity when you're reading the book of Mark, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give this video a huge thumbs up and don't forget to share and subscribe if you haven't already. See you same time next week. Jesus loves you. I love you. Take care and bye.